The two main ingredients in chili, the ones that give it most of its flavor, are the meat and the actual chilies that you use for the chili powder, which we're going to make and grind it ourselves today. So I use two kinds of meat in my chili. I like the texture of ground beef, but I also like a little bit more chew in it. So I get some type of a whole beef, either a tri-tip. In this case, I bought a New York strip. So one of the things when you're going to slice New York strip into chunks is it's good to put it in the freezer for a little while, because it firms it up and makes it a little bit easier to handle. And what we want to do is get about 1/2 to 1/4 inch chunks. Okay, that's ready to go into the pan. In my opinion, one of the most important things in having a really good chili is to make your own chili powder. You got to bake them in the oven at 350 for about somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes, and then you got to grind them up into your own powder. We just empty the seeds out. They should be pretty crunchy at this point. Got to get most of the seeds out. The seeds will give it a little bit more heat than you probably want. Besides just the dry herbs and spices that we're going to put in, the other two ingredients that provide flavor and some texture are onions and garlic. Some people like to leave it chunky. I really like to process it to the point where it's almost unrecognizable. I think it releases all the flavor. It gives the chili a little bit more flavor, and it doesn't subtract from the texture of the meat, which I think is the most important thing as far as texture-wise. I take my onion and I just give it a real rough chop. And then the same thing with the garlic. Most of the other dry ingredients are the chili powder, cumin, which we also roasted and ground myself, and then some other herbs that are already prepared. I'm going to mix them all together, and then when it's time to put them into the chili, we'll just put them all in together. So we start off with some chili powder, and if you're using freshly ground chili powder, you probably want to use a little bit more than regular chili powder, store-bought, because it tends to be fluffier and you need more to get that punch. I roasted and ground previously. And these kind of things you can adjust to your own taste once you've tried it once or twice. I'm going to get a teaspoon of oregano. Teaspoon of sugar, some salt, about a teaspoon. That's all the dry ingredients. We're going to add some. This is my secret ingredient, by the way. One of my secret ingredients is a bay leaf. It's not really that secret. I'm going to end up putting half of this spice in at one point and half of the spice in at the other. So I'll break the bay leaves down too, but basically get it nice and mixed. So the next step is to cook off the meat, brown it up before we start adding in the other ingredients. Once we put the onions in and let that cook down a little bit, sweat the onions a little bit, we'll add half of the seasoning, because that'll get into the beef and make it nice and flavorful. So when you bite into the beef, you'll actually get some of that flavor. Then when you add the other the wet ingredients, tomato sauce, some chopped tomatoes, soy sauce, then you add the rest of the spice, and that'll kind of round it out. Let's get the ground beef in there first. Chop that up a little bit. New York strip. Okay, so we're going to let this brown. Stir it up a few times while it's cooking, then the next step is the onions. If you're looking to cook it enough, it's going to cook more once everything else goes in. All right, let's get onions and garlic going in. I'm going to let this sweat a little bit, 5 to 10 minutes. We're going to add some beef broth. This is the stew at the end of the day, and get that bay leaf in there, and about half of our spice bomb. Get a nice mix. Now we're going to let this cook down for about 30 minutes. Okay, so this is the last addition. We're going to add all the wet ingredients and the rest of the spices. So we've got a little bit of just plain tap water. This is tomato sauce. Get the best you can find. These were whole stewed tomatoes, and then I processed them to a fineness. And the rest of the spices. That well combined, and then you just cook it. Maybe 45 minutes to an hour. The best thing to do actually is to then put it in the fridge overnight, because then the flavors just kind of all come together, and when you serve it the next day, it's really when it's the best. You can serve it same day, but I think one day later it's better. So it's really the perfect make ahead type of a meal, and that's pretty much it.